A little black girl CEO's daughter, seat stolen by white. Passenger, 1 minute later. Flight is grounded. A little black girl strapped onto the plane with great confidence, her backpack pressed tightly against her shoulders, her eyes glowing with quiet determination. She was only 12 years old, but she walked with the poise of someone who had already conquered the world. Yet the moment she reached her row, her stomach twisted. A white passenger, older, louder, brimming with arrogance, was lounging in her seat, as though it had always belonged to him. She took a breath, stepped forward, and said softly, "Sir, this is my seat." But instead of moving, he smirked. The cabin fell silent, passengers froze, and within 60 seconds, a single decision from the cockpit would shake every soul on board, forcing the entire flight to a humiliating, grinding halt. Her name was Maya Johnson. Just 12 years old, yet already a CEO, a child prodigy, a girl who had turned childhood curiosity into a company that was making waves across the globe. At 8 years old, she had built her first learning app. At 9, she launched a tutoring platform that drew in thousands of students. At 10, major investors called her the youngest genius in Silicon Valley. By 12, Maya was being flown across the world to deliver keynote speeches at conferences filled with adults twice, even 3 times her age. But genius never shielded her from prejudice. She had walked into boardrooms where businessmen patted her on the head instead of shaking her hand. She had been mistaken for the assistant of her own assistant. She had seen investors' eyes narrow when she introduced herself, as though her blackness and her girlhood canceled out her brilliance. Still, she persisted. Every rejection sharpened her. Every dismissal fueled her. And now she was on her way to the World Tech Summit, where she would stand before thousands and prove, once again, that age. Race and gender could not define her limits. Her parents had encouraged her to travel alone this time. "You've earned this, Maya," her mother had said. "Walk into that plane the same way you walk into every boardroom, with confidence." So she did. She booked her first-class ticket, not for luxury, but for quiet and respect, because she knew she had earned it. But as she reached her row, that respect was stolen in an instant. A man who had never heard her name, who had never built what she had built, who had never fought the battles she fought daily, looked at her as if she was invisible, as if she was a mistake in his world. The man sat with his legs spread, his bag under the seat, and a smirk of ownership plastered on his face. He glanced at Maya only long enough to dismiss her. "Excuse me, sir," Maya said softly, holding out her boarding pass with both hands, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "This is my seat." The man didn't move, didn't check his ticket, didn't even pretend to look at the number above the row. Instead, he leaned back further, folded his arms, and said loudly, "No, I've been flying this airline for years. This is my seat." The nearby passengers froze. Some stared openly, others averted their eyes, sinking into their magazines, pretending not to see. Maya swallowed. "No, sir. It says 3A, that's my seat." The man let out a short laugh, sharp, cutting. "Sweetheart, maybe you're confused. Go find another place." The word sweetheart stung. Not gentle, not kind. It was condescending, wrapped in superiority. The flight attendant rushed over, her heels clicking against the cabin floor. She checked Maya's ticket, smiled reassuringly, and turned to the man. "Sir, the young lady is correct. This is her seat." But the man's tone rose, harsh and commanding. "I don't care what the ticket says. She can sit somewhere else. She doesn't belong here." That last line sliced through the air. She doesn't belong here. The words weren't just about a seat. They were about everything Maya represented. The cabin grew tense. Passengers whispered. Some muttered impatiently, angry at the delay. Others looked at Maya with pity, and still, no one stood up for her. The attendant tried again, firmer this time. "Sir, if you don't move, I'll have to call the captain." "Then call him!" the man snapped, his voice booming. "I'm not giving up this seat for her." Passengers gasped softly. The word "her" hung heavy, sharp with disdain. Maya's small hands trembled around her boarding pass, but she refused to cry. She straightened her shoulders, standing taller than her 12 years. Her chin lifted against the tide of humiliation. Minutes dragged. The aisle clogged. The hum of impatience spread through the cabin like wildfire. Some passengers shifted uncomfortably. Others openly glared at Maya as if she were the cause, not the victim. Her heart pounded. Her cheeks burned. But she knew, if she gave in, if she walked away, she would be teaching every person, watching that their silence was enough to erase her. And Maya Johnson refused to be erased. The cockpit door opened. Out stepped the captain, tall, stern, and silent. The cabin hushed instantly. Every eye turned to him. "What's happening here?" he asked, his voice cutting through the tension. The flight attendant explained quickly, pointing to Maya's ticket. Maya held it up with trembling hands. The man in the seat crossed his arms, his face red with fury. "This is absurd," he barked. "I'm not moving for her. I've been flying first class longer than she's been alive." A cruel laugh rippled through the rows, some amused, some shocked. Maya's face burned hotter, but she did not look away. The captain studied her for a long moment. A small girl, alone, fragile in size yet unbroken in spirit. Then he turned his eyes to the man. "Sir," the captain said evenly, "this child is in the correct seat. You are not. You have two choices. Move to your assigned seat or leave this aircraft." The man shot up in outrage. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," the captain said without hesitation. "You are a passenger refusing to comply, and this flight does not take off until you're gone." Gasps filled the cabin. The man sputtered, raged, shouted. His words were venom. "This is outrageous!" But no one moved to defend him. Airport security was summoned. Within minutes, 2 officers boarded, towering over the man. He resisted, muttered curses, but they gripped his arms firmly and escorted him down the aisle. As he passed Maya, his eyes burned with fury, but she didn't flinch. She met his glare with steady calm, the calm of a girl who had been underestimated her entire life, yet refused to yield. And when the cabin door closed behind him, something extraordinary happened. Applause erupted. Not polite, hesitant claps, thunderous, rolling, unstoppable. Passengers clapped, some even stood, their faces shining with awe at the little girl, who had forced a grown man to face the consequences of his arrogance. Maya sank into her seat, her small frame trembling, her heart pounding, but her dignity intact. As the engines roared and the plane finally lifted into the sky, Maya sat quietly, staring out the window. The applause had faded, but the moment lived on in every corner of the cabin. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't wanted to be the center of a public battle. All she wanted was to get to the World Tech Summit, to share her ideas, to inspire. But once again, life had forced her to prove her worth in a place where she should never have been questioned. When the plane landed, whispers followed her. Some passengers offered gentle words of support. A woman leaned over and said softly, "You were braver than anyone on this plane." Another man, ashamed, admitted, "I should have spoken up." But Maya didn't smile. She didn't feel victorious. She felt the weight of a truth too heavy for a 12-year-old to carry, that even genius could not protect her from the world's prejudice. Still, there was something greater than victory in her heart. There was clarity, strength, a message louder than applause, because that flight would be remembered. Not for the man who refused to move, but for the little black CEO girl who stood her ground. Her story spread quickly. A passenger's recording went viral. News outlets replayed the moment again and again. The smirk of entitlement, the firm command of the captain, the courage of a child who refused to shrink. And soon the headlines were everywhere. 12-year-old black CEO refuses to give. Upseat, flight grounded after, passenger removed. But beyond the headlines, a deeper question lingered in the hearts of millions who watched. If a child must fight this hard for her seat, then how much harder must every black woman fight for her place in the world? And maybe, just maybe, that question was the true reason the plane had to be grounded that day.